we're going to philosophize and investigate the Enlightenment Movement, a philosophical movement that has impacted and changed a lot of things in our lives and the way we see things today. Three are probably the most famous of the Enlightenment philosophers, and that we'll go more in depth into each one of these gentlemen is John Locke, Charles Louis Montesquieu, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Now, these philosophers would probably be all in agreement about the main ideas of the Enlightenment is that we can use and apply reasoning to the natural, what's called natural philosophy. And natural philosophy can be broken down into rational theory and how you see the world. So we're going to go further and further into these topics, and we're going to look at everything from physics, which is the study of the physical world, versus metaphysics, which is the study of the non-physical world, things you can't see. Those all fall under Enlightenment philosophy and idea of reasoning. Just to think about some of the impacts on the Enlightenment, just picture how it has shaped our world today. As Americans, and the people in American culture and European culture, are the way you even think and the way we debate and argue about the issues that have basically been created by the Enlightenment philosophers. And we're going to find out how that is. Now, it all starts with this concept of this idea of philosophy. It goes back to the ancient Greeks. Philosophy is a search for truth, wisdom, and to be enlightened. In fact, in Greek culture, there's a famous saying that maybe the search for truth is more important than actually finding the truth. So we dedicate our whole lives sometimes searching or investigating truths about the universe or human beings, and we may never know the answer. And that famous saying is saying that that's okay. Sometimes you'll spend your whole life in school or studying or reading and trying to understand complex topics like the questions on the top left-hand corner. I think, therefore I am. Are you what you think you are? What is reality? What is real to me? Is it really real to everyone else? Is truth relative? That's a very deep question examined in philosophy. So what I think is wrong and right, is that absolutely true? So, for example, is killing always wrong? Well, if it's relative, aren't there cultures where they've killed people and they didn't believe it was wrong? So if you talk about the Aztecs or the Maya that would sacrifice people from a tribe that they beat out in war to give to the gods so that they could raise crops that year, is that immoral? Is that wrong? Is killing always wrong? Or is truth relative? Meaning, does it depend on where you live and what culture you're from? So if I think killing is okay to sacrifice people to the gods, is it really wrong? And does our morality and what we think is right and wrong change depending on when you're at? So if slavery was acceptable 2,000 years ago and almost all ancient civilizations had it, was it wrong then? Or is it wrong today? And that's a big question we ask in history a lot. Should we think from the point of view of people at the time? Or should we think at the point of view and what we know is right and wrong? And maybe those people did know. What is the meaning of life? Why do we live? Why are we here? These are all deep questions, and you can see the famous sculpture in the top right-hand corner of The Thinker. Now, the Enlightenment was a movement to seek the truth about the universe and humans, and those are very important ideas because we're going to go more in depth into both those ideas. First of all, the universe is the study of the physical world and how things are. Material world is actually the term they'll use in philosophy. Like a desk is material. Now, the study of humans is going to later, we'll talk about, is we actually have classes and people like myself as a social scientist that are dedicated to studying human beings and our behaviors and the choices we make. The Enlightenment was built on the ideas of the humanism and the study of the ancient Greeks and Romans. Now, humanism had really been brought to the forefront with the Renaissance artists and the Renaissance thinkers. Everybody from Leonardo da Vinci to Michelangelo and Donatello had used art and the human form to try to understand who we are. And they've gone back to the ancient Greeks and the Romans who thought that the human body is beautiful and that human nature is not always bad. Now, this really challenged a lot of things at the time of the Renaissance and at the time of the Enlightenment. because people were a lot of times viewed as sinners and evil by the church, and that the king was the true light and he was God on earth. So these guys are going to say, well, that's not necessarily true. In fact, kings make mistakes and kings do bad things, and sometimes kings can be bad guys or evil, and the people can be really good. So we had whole systems based on this idea that a hierarchy where God was ruling through the king. In the bottom left-hand corner, I saw this amazing painting. Actually, it's behind the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican, and that's actually Plato and Socrates, considered by many to be some of the first philosophers in the world, talking as they walk down the streets of the Agora in Athens. And I've been to both the Agora and I've actually seen this painting, and it just blows your mind when you see it. And then the other bottom right-hand corner, you see a famous Roman bath, and you could just see how advanced the Romans were, that you've learned about in ancient civilizations, like that they were clean, and that was so important. And actually, in some ways, a lot of things we did know in Europe had gone backwards. So we knew that cleanliness was important. The Romans and Greeks held that as important as exercising in a gymnasium and cleaning yourself, and actually reversed that. We start bathed a lot less, and sickness would travel, especially with the bubonic plague and so forth and so on. But while Europe was kind of falling apart, you can't really say that it was everybody's falling apart. The Muslim and Arabic culture in the Middle East and North Africa was becoming very advanced in math and science, and the Chinese were building machines and just blowing people out of the way with their science. But the Europeans were coming out of things with the Enlightenment and the Renaissance, and they were coming to start to become much more advanced in their reasoning and thinking. So we're going to talk about how we break down philosophy as Enlightenment philosophers. And Enlightenment philosophers focused on the understanding of physical world and society. Now, if you've ever gone to school, I hope you've paid attention to the fact that you've taken physical world classes and you've taken society classes. And we call those terms like social studies and science. So I'm a social science teacher, and I teach everything from actually called sociology, which is putting everything together and studying societies, to psychology is the study of the mind, to American history, which is the story of America, or world history is the story of the world, or European history is the story of Europe, and putting all these things together, they all go together. Government is studying the leadership of a group of people. So a monarchy or king is a form of government, but so is a republic, what we have, where we vote for people to represent us. And you may have taken American government, which is how our government works in America. The study of the physical world by Enlightenment philosophy resulted in the scientific revolution. And that is very important, because the scientific revolution is going to lead to a lot of developments and new ideas in the science community. And it all starts with the study of the physical world. Not that science had not existed up until the Enlightenment. The Greeks had done experiments, and the Egyptians, especially in Alexandria. But in Europe, it really brought science back with this big idea. And here's our big idea. Wow, now studying the physical world by testing hypotheses and establishing theories. So hypothesis is an educated guess, and theories are when you start doing research and looking at the parts and putting things together to come up with ideas. So in social science, we really focus in on theories and proving our theories is accurate or truthful. And again, it goes back to philosophy in an effort to search for truth. And in science, we use a hypothesis and we test our hypothesis to see if it's accurate. So if I drop a pen, because of gravity, it'll fall. Well, if I keep dropping the pen, because of gravity, it will keep continuing to fall. Now, a theory is a little bit more challenging, because in social studies, I have a theory that Socrates wanted us to search for truth, and that's more important than truth itself. But I'll try to find evidence from him actually saying that and proving that. But it's not going to be like science, because not every time I drop the pen, it's going to fall. I'm going to have to try to find as much evidence as I can to come as close as I can to the truth. But the honest answer is sometimes we just don't know. But as history goes on and more evidence we get, the more we can prove that we're accurate or we're getting closer to the truth. So thank you for checking in, and we'll continue with the next video.